Hi, everyone. This is Sophia Kianni, and I am an EarthX Impact Advisor, as well as the founder and executive director of Climate Cardinals. And I'm super excited to be talking with my colleague, Vlad, who works with me on the UN Youth Advisory Group on climate change.
Thank you, Sophia, and thank you to EarthX. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, Vlad, I would love for you to start by giving an overview of the recent retreat that we just had in New York City, working with the UN Secretary General, and then we can kind of give a teaser of what people can expect from the Global Youth Summit at the EarthX conference.
I think one of the greatest takeaways that it is great to share from the Youth Advisory Group retreat is not only the recognition of our efforts at the highest level per se, but also the fact that there is a link from our work that we're doing, particularly on climate matters, to the wider issues related to the UN reform and its future outlook. And here I'm primarily focusing on our Common Agenda report and its recommendations towards the establishment of the new UN Youth Office and in general changing its architecture of interaction with youth. And this is, I think, what we could and should expect more coming further. And I'm glad that there would be even more substantial input from the Youth Advisory Group on that track coming further. And I hope there will be also an ample opportunity to discuss that more in detail at the Global Youth Summit.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that on my end, through the Youth Advisory Group, I've really had the incredible experience of being able to see what it looks like to bring young people at the highest level of governance to be able to meet with decision makers and influencers. And I think that the number of people that we were able to meet across all spectrums of the UN, from the UN Foundation to different country ambassadors, really showed me the different levels of influence that each respective stakeholder is able to have. And so I would love for you to be able to shed light on what exactly you think the role that young people can play is in systems like this. Like, how can we better inform the processes, and how can we leverage the momentum of the youth climate movement to really push for solutions?
There are multiple avenues, but I would focus primarily on two in this regard. First and foremost, I think we should do even better than we have already done at educating one another about what it takes to get involved in formal processes on, be it observing negotiations or on helping their countries and their national representatives shape national determined contributions to the Paris Agreement that are actually inclusive and mindful of youth considerations. And in general, holding the decision makers at the national and the regional and local level to account, because the ambition at that level, at local, at national level, it's ultimately what matters for our success at the international level as well. And the second level to me is building allyships and bridges beyond the immediate possible alignments. For example, I think that the war that Russia is waging against Ukraine has significantly shifted the dynamic of the relationships between climate activists that are based in Central and Eastern Europe or coming from Central Eastern Europe and those that are based in Sub-Saharan Africa or in some other places in the global south, as in it brought this sense of common experience of being the victims of fossil fuels that are literally waging wars closer. And I think we should seize on that experience to leverage those new allyships, new relationships that are being established already now, to put them to good use at COP27.
Absolutely, I agree. I think one of the best experiences that we were able to have over the retreat was that we met with the Egyptian ambassadors, and we got to have a better idea of what exactly they're doing to create this youth pavilion that's the first of its kind platform for young people to have an official space as part of COP27. And so as the youth advisory group, we're going to be able to have representatives involved in the steering committee that are really going to be defining this process, which is an incredible opportunity. And so I'd love for you to be able to also illuminate better the different roles and efforts that we as YAG and as individuals are going to be playing heading into COP27. And then we can also touch on why why this global youth summit that's going to be happening at EarthX is going to be an important forum to be able to bounce around ideas with other young people so that we can better strengthen our movement as we push towards change at COP27.
Well, our first task as the Youth Advisory Group when it comes to COP27 is first and foremost prepare a great and smooth transition to the next cohort that is going to ultimately take over. I think it would be good also for many colleagues out there to hear that this is a format that is there to stay. This is not something that will just die with 7 of us.
Yeah.
And this is our primary responsibility. Secondly, we will, of course, be doing a lot of work in our individual capacities to on our topics and within our regions to make sure that we come to COP27 well armored with great stories, good arguments, and necessary connections to push agenda points that are important for us through. And last but not least, it is important to remember that for us as youth activists, COI17 is as important as COP27. And we are also making sure that we would be plenarily involved in that. In my case, for example, that is also going to be through helping the colleagues from the Green Jobs Working Group at Yango, which I am having the honor to lead for this year, to have a significant presence because the thematic of green jobs, as we have seen, for example, at COI16, is picking up steam at a really good pace.
And so we have an audience question. What is it that you want to achieve heading into the Global Youth Summit? I think I can first answer that. I think I'm really excited to touch base with these different young leaders ahead of our kind of forum convening to get a temperament for what specific cause areas they're excited about. For example, on the YAG, I know that I talk a lot about the need for climate education. Vlad, if anyone knows him well, is crazy about green jobs and really pushing for looking at climate action through an economic lens. And so I'm really excited to bring together the different respective strengths that each of these young people have to see how we can bigger picture focus on pushing for solutions. So would love to also hear your perspective, Vlad, of what is it that you want to achieve heading into the Global Summit?
I think the best shot that we have in the Global Youth Summit is first and foremost a giant mood and temperature check of what is happening in the room among our youth colleagues, because the release of the 2 working groups, IPCC reports, the start of the war that Russia is waging on Ukraine, and the significantly growing perspective of France electing potentially, hopefully not, climate skeptic president is a bundle of factors that is going to weigh on us a lot. And it would be great to understand the degree of resilience with which folks are approaching the challenges to come. And since the dust on the transition toward between the presidencies of COP has also settled, and we are setting our eyes already on the upcoming sessions of the subsidiary bodies in Bonn, it would be also good to understand which are, beyond the usual headlines, the main topical priorities that people would like to push through. We mentioned already the growing importance of green jobs. Since COP26, there was a lot of talk about loss and damage. So it would be great to see where the alignments are now.
Yeah, and another thing that I think is really incredible is that part of the reason that some of us chose to come to the UN Youth Advisory Group is that we wanted the opportunity to be able to bridge our activism and grassroots efforts with the more institutional power of the UN and to really leverage the space to be able to directly engage with decision makers and to have influence and sway over decision-making processes. And I think that heading into the Global Youth Summit, I think it will be a similar space where we're able to convene both young people as well as older, more established activists and people in the governance space. And so would love to also hear your perspective on that, Vlad, of how we can bring together these different groups ranging from grassroots orgs to the UN.
Well, I think it first and foremost starts with bringing them into the same physical space. And in this regard, Global Youth Summit is a great effort. Secondly, it is about following up on this gathering in the physical space through exchanges of knowledge and tips and strategies on the fields that are of greatest importance and advocacy to us and of mutual interest. Because unfortunately, what we have seen in previous iterations of the youth climate movement throughout the years, throughout the decades, that oftentimes there is very little transfer of institutional memory and knowledge from one generation of young climate activists to another. And this is something that we would really want to avoid right now, and to make sure that those who are coming after us, they are well equipped, and we give them the privileges that we have had the opportunity to have, and that they are standing on our shoulders and achieving even more and better things in the movement.
I really want to touch on that point that you made about the importance of bringing people together into a physical space, because I do think it's something that's incredibly underlooked. When you look at us, for example, and our colleagues, I mean, we are across 7 different time zones, and it's often so hard to have a productive, constructive dialogue when I know right now it's past 1 a.m. for you. One person is sleepy, one person is just waking up. And so I do think it's always an incredible experience to be able to convene people in person. And so I'd also love to hear from your experiences. What do you think went well at COP26? And what do you think that we can do better at COP27 when it comes to young people and the role that we play in the climate movement?
I think when it comes to COP26, one of greater headlines for the youth movement and youth inclusion was a much greater spotlight on our indigenous colleagues. After everything they have been going through, I think this has been one of the few heartening moments of COP26 that we definitely should build up upon and show our good allyship towards them and help them to go even higher on COP27. And on COP27, I think apart from increasing representation of the marginalized groups, and in my case, for example, I'm going to put particular emphasis on representatives from the Arctic region, as well as those of the working class communities fighting for just transition. It is also highly desirable to see more of our young colleagues who are becoming parts of the national delegations and are able to influence the process from within, and to bring as many of our perspectives as possible to the negotiating tables.
Absolutely. I think you're still right. I think one of the biggest critiques that we had of COP26 is that it did tend to be a very exclusive space, and it was very hard for young people to be able to get in, whether it be because of badge restrictions or the fact that hotels and accommodations were very expensive. And I definitely think that that's something we can do a lot better at COP27 to ensure that it's a more inclusive process and that we're hearing from the voices of those who are being disproportionately impacted, these marginalized low-income communities, et cetera. And so as we wrap up, I would really love to know, Vlad, what is it, this is an audience question, what is something that you wish you had known when you first got involved as a climate advocate and activist in this movement? Do you have any advice for people who also want to pursue a similar avenue of work or want to feel like they can make a difference and impact in this space?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think that would probably be a paraphrase from one of the greatest military strategists of all times, Karl von Clausewitz, that climate activism is politics by other means. And I'm saying that in the sense that in order to push points through in this environment, as in the bigger league politics, so to speak, appeals to reason, to common sense, to creative policy ideas, oftentimes are of limited use if you are also not politically savvy enough. And this is something that you can learn only through your own practical experience, often the hard way.
Yeah, I think that's such an incredible answer. And I think that on my end, honestly, my biggest advice is that I think every single person has the power and influence to be an activist. And one of the biggest things that I like to preach is that I think we need to strive for progress, not perfection in this space. I feel like often there's this notion that if you want to be a climate activist, you have to do everything right. You have to like you never fly, you can only use the bus, et cetera, et cetera. But I definitely think that if every single person feels like they have the power to make these incremental steps to make a difference, that ultimately the world will be a better, more inclusive space. And so I think that this has been a really awesome conversation. I'm so excited for us to head into the Global Youth Summit and to see the impact that we're able to make, and especially how we're able to convene all these different young people as we head into COP27. So I think that's all from my end. Vlad, feel free to jump in if you want to leave our audience with a few closing words. But I'm excited. I feel a very renewed sense of hope and optimism.
Likewise, Sophia, and I think your point on the power of individual incremental deeds and the understanding of their limits is also something that is extremely important, because ultimately, us as individuals bickering between one another only benefits those who are the actual biggest emitters and who would be gladly seeing us shifting blame from one another while they remain unaccountable. And ultimately, we need to hold them accountable and on the hook all the time.
100%. I agree. We need to strive for collective action, holding these decision makers accountable, holding corporations accountable. And really, as a collective together, we will be able to make so much better of a change if we remain united. So, thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you at the Global Youth Summit.
Thank you.
You are